Go ahead and start today's webinar. This is the first in a series of what we hope to be 6 Financial Leadership Encore webinar series. And we've got FMA, Adaptive Insights, Cohn-Resnick, and AMS that are going to be contributing as presenters in this, along with JMT Consulting. Today's webinar is the Financial Leadership Encore webinar series, the CFO's role in making an organization great. Our presenter is Andrea Mills. She is MBA, CPA, CCSA, CGMA Principal at Fiscal Management Associates, LLC. And we are very, very honored to have her as a presenter today. Future financial leadership webinar series that we have coming up over the next 3 months. We have one scheduled for each month, July, August, and September. We also have October and November, which are not here. We still have to lock those down. But these are some of the webinars coming up, and we hope that you register for them as well. Innovate 2017, save the date. If this is something that interests you, we do have a financial leadership track the first day of Innovate, and it's something that you can just register for that track. It's for CFOs, directors, and leaders. It's a thought leadership track, and we would hope that you would attend that and you have the opportunity. This year it's going to be May 16th through the 18th, Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. JMT also has live seminars, user groups, and regional trainings coming up. Executive seminars that we have scheduled for September, Uniform Grant Guidance, the big picture for nonprofit compliance reporting, and that is taking place in New York City and also in Boston. You can register on our website under events. We also have at JMT live instructor-led product training from our professional consultants. And these are 3-day regional trainings that specialize in MIP. JMT's end-of-year fiscal promo is going on right now, and we would encourage you to take advantage of this. It's good through the end of the month. And we are celebrating 25 years, and we are very honored to do this. To be serving nonprofits for 25 years, we sell and work strictly with nonprofits, and they are our specialty. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Andrea. And again, thank you for attending.
Hi, everyone.
Andrea?
Yes.
You're on. Let me just change the screen. There you go. I'm not seeing your screen yet.
Yep, I'm right there.
Okay, got it.
Just have to go to the beginning. Okay. Welcome, everyone. We're glad that you're here. And I feel honored to be the first in the series of webinars for this session. And this is actually quite nice that JMT is putting it on in terms of if you weren't able to make it to the conference, you're able to get a repeat of what were some of the topics that were discussed at the conference, the Innovate conference that happened a couple of months ago in Orlando, Florida. I had the honor of being there, and this is the presentation that I presented to the organizations that were able to attend. So a little bit about FMA, just real quick. I saw some familiar names on the registration, but just a little bit about what we do. We are a niche consulting firm to nonprofits and to foundations, and we work with foundation grantees or with foundations or with organizations on a one-on-one basis. We're all about building internal capacity. And internal capacity has many, many definitions, but in a lot of cases what I like to say is that we're all about building communication between the inner workings of the organization, and then also how the organization communicates externally. And I know we would wear our debit and credit hat and talk about financials and numbers and all that kind of stuff, but really it's all about how do we as leaders communicate financial information and get people to understand and help individuals within our organization understand the importance that they play in financial management. And so in a lot of cases, what I like to say about FMA, we may be focusing on numbers and debits and credits and tools and systems, but really in a lot of cases we're focusing on communication and leadership skills. And hopefully by the end of our conversations today, you will have a better feeling and a better understanding of just what we are trying to communicate out there when we're working with organizations trying to build their inner workings. My background is actually out of public accounting. I was a baby auditor at a point in time in my life, and then I was with a regional firm, and then also spent some time at Grant Thornton. And my client base at that time was venture capitalists, small businesses, and nonprofits. And I would always see this disparity between what was happening in the for-profit sector versus the nonprofit sector. And so I found FMA in 2001 and was very happy to be here and a part of this team, because I could see that we were building the inner workings of an organization just much the same way that I would see in the for-profit sector. And so a lot of what we talk about is really building effective organizations and companies, and not necessarily focusing on the terminology of not-for-profit or nonprofit. So let's define operational excellence. So if you can imagine, here at FMA, we sit around the table and we say, okay, what does it mean if we look at an organization and we say that's a very high-performing organization? How would we define operational excellence? And so internally, this is actually a true story. We sat down to say, how would we, if we looked at organizations that we are working with, where would we define those that had organizational excellence and those that were still working to get to that level, and what we talk about high performers. So I'm just going to go through some of the key activities within an organization. And so if you think about it, one major component to everything that you do is programmatic. You have a mission. That mission needs to be delivered, and then there needs to be specific outcomes to that mission delivery, and how are you able to evaluate and improve those outcomes. So programmatically, we have a very big component of our organization that we have to make sure is functioning the way that it should. We also then know that for program to be a success, and what they need to do in our mission delivery is that we've really got to have a really good, strong sales team, and I call our sales team our development team. And that centers on do we have the right ability to go out and fundraise? Do we have the ability to go out and market and communicate our needs back to funders and to donors, but also communicate out exactly what it is we have been able to be accomplishing out there in the world. So we've really got to have a good team in place to be able to support the organization at the level it needs to be supportive. Well, the conversation that we have with a lot of organizations is to say, funders do not know how to run your inner workings, only you do. And so the more that you can become efficient in terms of communicating what your true needs are, and we'll say true costs of program, and having your development team be able to do that, the stronger the organization is able to communicate their needs. And then last but not least, for program to be a success, what we always say is you've got to build the house. And the house has to grow at the same speed that program is growing. And when we're working with organizations where we see that there's challenges, inner challenges, in a lot of cases what we'll see is on a programmatic side, they've grown twofold, and on an operations side, it has not kept pace with what are the needs of the of the organization for it to be able to provide good programmatic delivery. And so when we look at operations, operations are the finance team, the accounting departments. That are they able to support program with information so that they can make timely decisions? Technology, program needs the right type of tools to be able to support them in what they're doing. And then operations and HR. And so if we look at it, finance, technology, HR, operations, and I'm focusing on program, but they also support development too in terms of what development needs to accomplish. But what I say is all three components that are sitting here when we look at operational excellence have to have really good systems of communication and good portals around what each one needs to fulfill within the organization, what their role is, and how they communicate it all together. And so on a programmatic basis, it's what are the needs out there, and what do we need to be doing for the future. Development, can we go out and fundraise for it? And then operationally, are we setting aside enough resources to build our operations to the level they need to be at to be able to support both of the other components of the organization? So defining operational excellence, we came up with our definition and we said operational excellence is an organizational culture that values learning, problem solving, and a strong commitment to continuous improvement. And when we talk about continuous improvement, with the advent of technology over the past, let's say 20 years, there's so many different ways in which organizations can continually improve and improve processes and efficiencies. So if we look at continuous improvement and a strong commitment to it, the first piece of it is, what's our strategy? What do we want to be doing and where do we want to be? What's the long-term vision here? And so is that long-term vision, is it in good mission alignment with what we had said we were going to accomplish? And then we need to look at whether or not we have adaptable plans in place and good strategy. And when we talk about adaptable plans and strategy, the example I use is in some cases we'll walk into an organization that's just embarked on a strategic planning process, and my question will be, well, what are the costs involved with it? What are the budgets that are assigned to it so we can incorporate that long-term 3-year vision into a 1-year operating plan? And in some cases they hadn't even figured out the number side of the equation. So we need to make sure that whatever our strategy is, we're communicating it back in numerical terms. And then last but not least is along the lines of strategy, do we have good governance and do we have good risk management in place? And so, and when we talk about risk management too, it's not always about certain risks that we would say would be business risks, but it's also about our reputational risks that may be out there too. And so are we taking a higher level look at our organization and making sure we are mitigating any risks that may be associated with it, and do we have a good governance structure in place? And before we finish this presentation, I'm going to go over to a website really quick that will give you some tools and resources around governance and help you to be able to provide better support there in that area. It definitely seems to be one of the areas out there in the sector that is a continual challenge for organizations that we work with. Having the ability to attract good board members, strong board members, and board members that understand what it means financially to be running the organization. So having that structure in place. Then we look at, so we have our strategy, what are we going to do, what's our reason for being, and we're all in alignment, we know what the 3-year vision is, but then how do we pull together the resources to be able to fulfill that? And so do we have the right talent and teams, and this is all around HR practices, and do we have the right HR support to be able to give us the right resources? And then also on the fundraising side of the equation, are we able to go out there and attract the dollars of what we need, and we have a good development team in place to be able to pull in the resources that we need to be able to fulfill what our strategic vision is. And then last but not least, we look at from our strategy and our resources, what are our practices, what are our internal practices, and how can we make them more efficient so that we can operate at a higher level. And so we're all about looking at efficient and integrated workflows, making sure that it doesn't take 5 days for a piece of paper to get from one place to the other. How do we utilize technology to increase the pace where people have access to data on a more timely basis? We also look at performance management and whether or not we have good evaluation systems in place to make sure that we're on track for what we need to be doing. Also, do we have good decision-making capabilities? Do we have the access to be able to make decisions timely to data that is very relevant and not old data? And then, of course, we talk about what are our internal processes for communicating, and also what are our external communication processes. And internally, it's building the team to be able to work together at a higher level. We'll call the leadership team, and all individuals within the organization. And also then, how do we communicate effectively externally to external parties that may be providing governance to us, and also to external donors and funders and the community. So with that, all of those components put together are the building blocks of operational excellence. And when those building blocks are put together in the right way, we look at that as long-term sustainability within an organization. It all takes time, I know that, and it's not something that happens overnight, but if the leadership team can be well-versed in terms of what needs to happen within the organization, everyone focuses on the same end result. So let's look at operational excellence again, and when we say what's a healthy organizational culture, well, we have good planning and strategy, and we have good implementation of those plans. How do we get from point A to point B? What is that long-term vision? And so internally, whenever we look at an organization, we look at people, process, and tools. So what I say here is that if the phone rings here at FMA and an organization is calling to say something's not working right, it's usually those components that I focus on in terms of, okay, do they have the right people, the right team? Are they in the right spots? How is that working? Do they have the right tools in place to be able to either collect data or disseminate data properly? And what's the workflow? Is data taking a long time to get from point A to point B, or information's being bogged down in certain areas of the organization? So, or maybe people don't understand the right process of the workflow. So we always break it down into these three components. And if something's not working right, it might be just one factor. It might be people or technology or workflow, or it might be a combination of all three or two. So let's start with people. People seem, the whole area around people is a big conversation right now. I will be out in California. I'm leaving tomorrow, and I'll be out there next week. And whenever I'm out there in the San Francisco area, there will be billboards advertising for people to apply at organizations. Can you imagine taking out a full billboard to let people know that you're looking for talent management, you're looking to recruit? I was at a seminar last week for a bunch of accountants, bunch of geeky accountants, and there was a presentation which was all around HR, and an organization presented. The name of the organization is called Gusto. It was formerly called Zen Payroll, and this presentation was not about what Gusto does. A little piece of it. They're actually like a Paychex or an ADP. They're out in the San Francisco area. And they are providing HR solutions around payroll processing and benefits and all that kind of good stuff. So, but the conversation was not around them and what their services. It was all around their HR practices, and it was very interesting. Their head of HR was there. This organization has grown in 1 year from 60 employees to 300. I found that astounding. And the conversation that was up there was all around talent recruitment, attracting talent, getting people's buy-in, and really being able to fulfill what you need to do with the right people on the bus. And it's very interesting. I went to throw their name out there. They're not on this list here today because I just found out about them. But if you get some downtime, check them out. I just found their operations and their ideas to be very creative and innovative in how they're out there working to attract the right talent and people. But as you can imagine, if we look at your biggest cost in running your organizations is your people. And recruiting and having the right talent and the right people in place and good HR practices is key to any successful organization and when we look at operational excellence. So let's talk about our people. And HR is one of those components. Remember when we had those 3 blocks? That's supporting the organization. It's one of those pillars that's holding up the house. HR is an extremely important component to our organizations. And as CFOs of the organizations, we are charged in some cases with the responsibility of overseeing this department and making sure that it's working the way that it should. So if we look at our people, we've got to have really good talent strategy. We've got to take care of our people and have the right things in place. And then we've also got to be looking at, do we have right compliance and systems in place and to make sure that we're abiding by the laws and rules that are out there for HR. So when we look at talent strategy, we think about, do we have good recruitment and succession planning? Succession planning at the top, are we crafting and creating the new leaders for the organization? And then how are we out there recruiting and bringing people to our team? With that, are we being competitive with compensation and benefits? And how do we look at compensation and making sure we're bringing the people, the right people, and holding on to the right people, reducing turnover with our people? Do we have good performance management systems? And are people held accountable for deliverables and they understand what their goals are and what they need to accomplish internally in the organization? And then how are we looking at our people to professionally develop them? How are we taking them to the next level? And then our employee relations. Do we have good employee relations there? So I want to tell you a story, and this is an organization that's actually here in New York City. And I had the opportunity to meet with them a couple years back based on a study we were doing for the Wallace Foundation. And they actually looked at turnover rates in their after-school program. And what they noticed was that their turnover was a 9 to 12 month factor. Someone will come on board and maybe stay a year or less than a year. And they finally figured out that it would actually be more beneficial for them to offer benefits to their part-time people than to help with turnover rates, and they started to do that. Once they started to do that, they became one of the most attractive programs to work at. So they were attracting talent that wanted to come over and work for them, and they also reduced their turnover rates from a 9 to 12 month, just a 1 year cycle, to a 2 to 3 year cycle. And so they're able to keep people on board for longer terms. Most people were finishing out their school and would stay. They were able to increase program quality and then be more effective. So again, when we look at our talent strategy, what is it? Do we have good HR systems in place to think about that? Compliance and systems too. We're all aware there's new law out there. Are we keeping up with pace? Are we doing things the right way? Do we have good onboarding and good termination policies? Do we follow good regulatory compliance and benefits administration? And then, of course, we need good HR systems. So let's talk about technology, our people, process, and tools. So hopefully there are some people on this webinar that do remember the left side of the slide. I know that I do. And then if we look at the right side of the slide, it's something that's glued to our hips and we can't go anywhere without it. If you think about it, imagine those days way back when we could have conversations on a telephone, talk to people and do that kind of stuff, but we really couldn't talk and transfer data and gain information and knowledge all in one spot. So we've come a long way, and it's been over a short period of time. So so if we look at technology, technology plays a key role, and it's a very critical factor in everything that we do. So we've all heard about the cloud and what are we doing, when are we moving there, how do we get there, how does the cloud help us to operate more efficiently, how do we store data without having to deal with paper. There are many, many ways in which technology can help to improve what we're doing, and just by the sheer fact that you're aware of JMT Consulting, you can learn very much about what are some of the critical things that are out there that can help you to become more technologically ahead of the bell curve. And so when we look at, do we have good IT strategy in-house? And what is our IT strategy? So first off, we have software and applications, and we have various departments. We might be collecting programmatic data. We have development software. We have an accounting package. How do all these packages talk to each other? How are they all related, where we're collecting data in one place and it's able to be communicated to the other packages that are associated? What applications are we using? What type of payroll applications are we using, or employee expense reimbursements are we using? And so again, software and applications, and really having a good strategy around, are we operating at the highest level possible? What's that system integration? And then what type of user support are we able to gain? And so what type of access to training do we have? And then do we have internal power users to be able to utilize the software and bring it to the next level? So what's our IT strategy and game plan? Very critical. Electronic communications, how are we communicating? I can make telephone calls from my computer now. I don't have to have my phone with me. How are we communicating electronically, pictorially, so we can see each other? How can we communicate from various locations? We don't necessarily all have to be in the same office anymore, and we can operate very virtually and still feel as if we're in the same room together. My team, we have a national team now, and we have really been focusing on this area of communications that are more personalized, even though they're in an electronic form. Data management, how are we collecting data? We are now at the point in time where we really should not be relying on paper. There are portals in which we can collect information. It can be all electronic. There are ways of having good backup procedures and support, and where we can we don't necessarily have to go file something anymore and go look for it, and we're able to have data at the touch of our hands, at the touch of our phone, and have access to that information. And then again, hardware and infrastructure. What are the good resources that we have in place? What is the right resource that we have in place, and how are we utilizing that? Do we have a good have we figured out what's the right hardware and infrastructure for our organization? So there's some technology resources that are out there. You may, on your downtime, want to take a look at. One is n10.org. It's an organization of nonprofit professionals who put technology to use for their causes. Some good stuff there. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about TechSoup. TechSoup has been around to really provide learning resources to nonprofits, and also helping them to get discounted software services and products for when they need software products for their organizations. And then we have Idealware. It's again provides research, impartial, accessible resources about software, so to help nonprofits make smart software decisions. Really, there are a lot of decisions that have to be made around what type of technology your organization is utilizing, what's the best portals to have in place, what's the most important portal, and then how does that portal talk to all the other ones. Let's go to workflow. So process improvement, and we all know, we're all dealing with scarce resources. It seems to be hard to come upon. Technology sometimes isn't the solution. And we know, too, that sometimes adding people can create bottlenecks, and it may not help with our process improvement. So within the organization, it's up to us to figure out what are the most efficient ways for information to go from point A to point B. So why would we look at process improvement? Who cares? Well, it can reduce the cycle time from when something gets from point A to point B. It can eliminate redundant steps and errors, and it can reduce, there's a reduction in variability. So, and I'll tell you an example of something we're working on right now. We have a client that does a lot of fundraising out there and on the internet. They were tracking information on spreadsheets, and the accounting system was also tracking customer donor information too. So as you can imagine, they're collecting data in many different places, and sometimes that data didn't agree to each other, and there was a lot of redundancy there. And so now what they are doing is they're building up their website so that when a donor comes to make a donation, it can be made on the website. The donation then talks to Salesforce, and it gets put into the corresponding buckets that it belongs to. And then Salesforce then talks to its accounting package, which they've currently decided to go with Intact. So we've got one piece of information going in one spot, and there was not one single person in that organization touching that information until the end where it belongs when they're doing reconciliations. So again, how do we improve processes so that we're more efficient? So with the outcomes are increased quality. We've got cost reductions because we've got the need for less work. And then again, it helps us increase our capacity to be able to focus on higher level work. So this is an example of maximizing efficiency. If you remember, credit card bill would arrive in the mail. We then would be chasing for receipts, running around, and then finally we would be entering charges, or in some cases we weren't able to enter them all in, and they'd be sitting in a sundry account until we could finally get all the receipts in place to know where everything needs to be posted to. And so now, with the advent of technology, if you think about it, I can download the bill online. In some cases, the credit card can talk to the accounting system. Again, there are portals in which employees can upload receipts so that I don't need to track down this data. It's sitting out there. I can just pull it down, and then I can enter in charges. So we look at the way, how can technology help us to reduce the amount of time and effort that's associated with doing something. We've also been working with organizations to look at things more pictorially. And when we think about looking at numbers and data, well, dashboards are supported by numbers and data. They're behind it. But in some cases, we can actually help create a quick picture and help people to understand things much easier with a dashboard reporting system. So again, it's the quick picture. Sometimes it's easier to read up from the spreadsheets, but we can always drill down from the dashboard to what the spreadsheets say. It will help us with how to make things stand out much quicker than if we were looking at numbers. It complements, it doesn't replace other key reports, but it can help to enforce that pictorial. It does facilitate communication between staff and at the board level, and it can support our strategic decisions. With the advent of technology and increases with better, more efficient software and tools, we have the ability to create dashboards much more readily. And a lot of the packages that we work with right now, dashboard reporting is becoming a critical component when we're implementing new software packages. So this is just an example of some dashboards, and we look at, what are your key performance indicators? What do you want to be looking at as an organization? Every organization is different. When we walk into an organization to help them build dashboards, a lot of the conversations around what do we really want to be looking at? What's critical data that we have to look at timely to be able to make good management decisions and strategic decisions for the organization. So this is one organization that I worked with. Their dashboard on a monthly basis to the finance committee was just one page, front and back, and on the front were key financial metrics that they were looking at, and on the back were development and HR and programmatic metrics. So it all depends on what's important to the organization and what you need to be tracking. So workflow, if we think about it, it does facilitate a culture of improvement. And when we think about it, when we look at our team, in a lot of cases, our team can help us think about how this workflow can increase and become better. Again, though it starts with the tone at the top from leadership, and leadership's buy-in to make sure the organization's on the forefront of the best technology to help increase workflow and processes. Again, we need to listen. What's the source of frustration with staff and donors and each department? And again, we need to create the buy-in through participation in the decision process. And then also we want to help our team to be encouraged to help us problem solve. It's not just one person in the room trying to figure out all the solutions. It's really having the team help us to really figure out what are the best solutions that we need to have in place. Again, also trying something new. It's okay to take risks, and really, from risks you'll learn what are the best next steps, and then also again, don't forget to celebrate your successes. Some good articles that are out there: Frameworks for Change, Six Sigma, a driven roadmap for change in terms of how nonprofits are helping to maximize time. We have a Black Belt Six Sigma on our team here. Lean, what does it mean to be lean? Are you a lean nonprofit? And then there's the Kaizen framework for continuous improvement. So there's a really good article on, in lieu of money, Toyota donated efficiency to a New York charity. And last but not least, let's talk about financial management. So good strategic financial management, and when we look at it and when we think about it, does the organization, is it high performing at that level? They have good planning, they've got good governance, and they've got a good system for monitoring against those plans. And again, then internally we talk about people, process, and tools. Do we have the right inner operations in place to make this all happen? So if we think about a good strategic financial management, we have good financial planning. We prioritize the use of our resources. We also have a good monitoring practice in place. And when I talk about monitoring, it is also that anyone within our organization that has the ability to manage a dollar, spend a dollar, and have control over a component of our organizations also has to have the ability to tell us what will happen in the future. And when we talk about monitoring, we also talk about, do you have good processes in place for projecting? What is the future going to look like? And that is with having good programmatic leaders that can tell us how they're going to be operating months ahead of time, and also having a good development force that's able to tell us what's happening on the financial end of things. So again, then they need good internal operations so that they can rely on good information, reliable information. And then again, we need to have a good governance structure in place. So I'm going to click out of the PowerPoint for a second, and I just want to take you over to a website just so that you can have this in the back of your minds, and this is just something to check out. It's a website that we were able to create from the Wallace Foundation, and it is a website that is full of tons of articles and information Overview section is all about, has tons of good videos and good articles for you to check out. Planning has, as I just went through that slide, planning, monitoring, operations, and governance. Each tab has a wealth of information. We also offer free webinars, 1-hour webinars on this website to walk you through it, but there's a podcast that can walk you through it. And I'm not going to go through all the tools that are here, but I wanted you to be aware of it, and so that you could take a look at it when you've got some downtime. And so again, lots of good resources. It's continually being updated. It's been funded by Wallace, and there's good value add here to help you in terms of running your organizations. The website is at www.strongnonprofits.org, and that's www.strongnonprofits.org. If you type that in, it'll take you to this website. So again, planning, do we have good processes in place to monitor? What are our operations, our pillars that are supporting us, and do we have good governance? And so if we think about it, how is the financial leader successful? Well, financial leaders are not just defined by understanding finance anymore. That's not the role of a good financial leader. And when we think about strong CFO traits, you definitely need to have the technical skills. I'm not going to throw those out. And it's key, it's critical, it's important. You need to understand financial information. You need to have good business planning and analysis and be able to understand that and communicate the future. But if you think about it, if you need information about the future, you've also got to have really good people skills and leadership skills. And so that when we look at a strong leader of a team, it's not only being able to analyze the data and understanding the data, but it's also being able to get other people to understand their role in the process. So good team building and coaching and mentoring, and then also the ability to help have your team be able to achieve the goals that we all want to carry out. And so do we have good negotiating, decision-making abilities, and the ability to influence our team to move in the right direction. And last but not least, of course, we need to have good business skills to be able to run. We are running companies, and we need to be able to make sure that we have the right skills in place to be able to run our companies to the level that they need to be run at. This is a really good article out of CGMA magazine. And so again, it's called the Competency Framework. The web link is here, and you'll be able to read this article. It's really very good read, a good read for wanting to understand what makes a really good leader and what makes a financial leader successful. And again, it's not all about the numbers. And when we look at technology and are we utilizing the best financial system? Well, the first thing we look at is whatever package we're deciding to go with, how does it talk to other packages? And remember, I don't want to be entering data in one area and have to re-enter it again in the second area, in the third area, in the fourth area. We want to reduce those redundancies. Any good consulting shop can help you to think those things through. JMT spends a lot of time with clients in terms of thinking about what tool are you going to utilize and how does it talk to other tools. And so we want to make sure that when we enter data in one portal, it's able to talk to all of the places where it needs to talk to without someone having to manually enter it. There are a lot of different systems that are out there right now, and again, it is making the critical decision on which ones you should be looking at. And in some cases, when we walk into a client, we'll say which one of these components, these circles, is the most important circle. Sometimes it might be the fundraising database that's the most critical component in the organization, and then we look at what databases would that fundraising database talk to. In other cases, it is the accounting system that's the most critical component, and what does that talk to? Or it might be how you're data collecting, and that might be the most critical component in your organization. And that's it for my presentation. I think we're going to open it up for questions. I'm going to give the controls over to Angela.
Okay, so if anyone has any questions at this time, you can type them in once again to the questions section that's located on your dashboard on the right-hand side. We did have one question at the beginning, Andrea, and the question was the name of the organization that you referred to as an example regarding the importance of talent.
The HR organization?
Yes,
when I was talking about
so.
the HR, it was Good Shepherd Family Services.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions at this time? You can also raise your hand if you'd like to. We can unmute you if you have a microphone, and you can ask it directly. Okay, can you provide the name of the organization that posted on the billboard for talent?
Oh, well, that's out when I'm in San Francisco. It's many, many different organizations that are buying billboards and trying to recruit. So,
okay.
Yep,
Gotcha.
it's a whole bunch of them that are out there looking for talent.
Okay. All right, well, we'll just see if there's any other questions. Does that mean that talent is scarce?
Yes, it does. And one of the conversations that the organization I talked about, Gusto, which was the payroll organization, it was formerly called Zen Payroll. One of the conversations the HR person had was, we're all out there, looking for the best people. And she even said, we're competing with CPA firms, because this was a conference for CPA firms, and she said, we're competing with you guys along with competing with other payroll providers that are out there. And so we take HR very seriously. Some other things that that she talked about that they do. Well, first off, can't imagine growing from 60 people to 300 in a year. That's I'm continually looking for talent, and I can't imagine having that many people come on board all at once. But they really focus on making their employees feel as if they are owners in the organization, and giving employees a lot of autonomy to make decisions. They also enforce that a required 3-week vacation for every employee, and a 3-week vacation where they're not allowed to be on their cell phone for emails. And they don't have to take the 3 weeks consecutively, but there is a, they do have to be away from work and not be thinking about it. One of the comments that you said, it helps them to come back and be more creative and think about ways in which we can improve and continue to grow at the rate we are and what we're doing. It was a very interesting conversation around being able to attract the right talent. She said, we do make bad choices and bad decisions, but we take a very long time before we hire someone, and we are very quick to make it, if it doesn't work, not be around anymore. And so there's long time to hire, quick to say this isn't working. And she talked about their turnover rates being extremely low, but of course, they also have made, sometimes it's just not the right fit, but they're very quick to talk about that.
Okay, and so would you say that this is an employee's market in that?
I think it always has been.
Okay. Okay, so the next question that we have is, which resources would you suggest for strengthening the other skills for a CFO besides the technical skills?
Yes. Well, the Chartered Global Management Accountant, that magazine, has a lot of, that's the CDMA. I don't know how you would be able to maybe subscribe to that. They just come here on their own. But there's a wealth of information all around, outside of the box of, the numbers and more on leadership skills development. There are also other portals out there for coaching and leadership skills building. We have been actually focusing more in that area with helping to build strong communicative teams. We have a person on our team that's a certified Myers-Briggs person and a certified coach. And so we've been getting away from the numbers as much. We know how important they are, but we know that if people don't have good communication portals, then data doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't really mean anything. And so so there are resources that are out there to one, either build personal skills and or also build the team's ability to communicate and make good decisions together and their skills. And that comes with understanding personalities and nuances and how people work together and how certain styles like to work and others like to work. So
okay, so Gordon, the person who just asked that question, said he's referring to the slide with the 4 components, and I think that we covered that. The next question is, what is the best way to handle grant management, and how does that split between finance and development? Great question, Keith.
Yep. So I always say this. I say when I was in undergrad and I was going to get my accounting degree, my BBA in accounting, there was no requirement for me to take a government contracts grants management class. That was not something that was required. I had to know fund accounting to pass the CPA exam, but there was not this government compliance grants management class that I had to pass to be able to sit for the CPA exam. So it's very interesting in the nonprofit sector how that all of a sudden starts to fall as if it's a finance function responsibility. And what we say is that if you are really going to get serious about being in the government area and asking for government dollars, then that area has to be carved out and it has to be its own unit, contracts compliance unit. It gets data from the finance team. So the finance team, if you think about it, they are charged with making sure that general ledger is what it should be, and financials are getting out the door on a timely monthly basis. And they will be communicating with the compliance grants management area of the organization, but that compliance grants management area is not a finance function. Now, what we say is the person who's running that area, the ones that we, in some cases say are the rock stars to run those, and are in some cases come out of program and they have a good financial acumen, but they know how to talk the program talk, they know how to talk the government contract compliance talk, and then they know how to look at the finances and make good decisions about how dollars are being spent and where they're being spent. And so, and be able to communicate that back to their support to be able to do bud mods and communicate to funders what are the real needs in running those contracts. So that unit, now both units would report to the CFO, but the finance team, director of finance will say, and the contracts compliance specialist team, those 2 units have to be carved out and they then report to a higher level person.
Okay, and then he's talking about grant tracking, both private and government grants, and he asked for any good software packages. And Keith, I would tell you that JMT does have some grant management packages that we do sell, and we'd be happy to discuss that with you, or we can take this offline. And if there's a better package that's available for you, then we can certainly recommend that as well. Are there any central locations for seeing comparisons of different accounting software programs?
Yes, someone forwarded me an article last week that just came out. I'm sure if you Google it, because if I got the article in an email from someone, there's some. One was on comparing Intact to other packages, and then the other one was there were two. The other article was on just comparing Intact versus Financial Edge versus I'm not going to use the right terms. I'm going to say MIP, but it's Sage whatever now, and comparing those packages across the board. So they're out there. There are good articles that are out there. Taking a look at them. But okay. You can also, in terms of when you do sit down with a provider, they also will help you to be able to think through things too.
Right, and that's something that JMT does, is that we can actually sit down and look at the needs that you have, and if we have the software solutions to help you with that. And I know a lot of the things that you covered, especially with fund accounting and tracking, reporting, budgeting, and then even grants and fundraising. JMT has companies that we work with on all of that, and what we specialize in is actually choosing the best one for you, and that's why we sell several of them, is that we can choose the best one for your nonprofit. And if we don't have it and there's something that's better for you, then we're not going to recommend something that we do have. So we're happy to discuss any of that with you, but we have Nexonia that tracks your finances and does like what you were talking about, Andrea, with the credit card reporting. It also has an HR module. So there's several things that we have.
Yeah. Technology's come a long way in terms of what's out there, what portals are out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, well, that is it for the questions then. And if anyone has any other questions for Andrea or about this webinar, please feel free to email me. Again, that's arourke@jmtconsulting.com. I will be happy to forward the questions to Andrea. You will be getting an email approximately an hour after this webinar. It will have a survey that we ask that you fill out. It also has a link to the other webinars that you can sign up for in this series. Andrea, thank you so much for your time and for being the inaugural speaker on this series. We so appreciate it, and we appreciate each of you all who attended today and took time out of your day to be here. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.